Yes, we are live on Facebook too. And thanks again. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's online training. My name is Tim from Beyond Horizon Global Academy. This training is organized by Horizon Global Academy and Brussels Diplomatic Academy. Today we are presenting Cybersecurity A secure way to financial technology, to be presented by Yusuf Ayar, Senior Security Specialist at Curve and Horizon Global Academy lecturer. Also, Thomas Leonard Smith, Security Consultant and Designer and Horizon Global Academy lecturer. You know, cybersecurity is becoming a fundamental part of general management function as a digital domain increases its share in the global workplace day by day. Yet the rapid growth of FinTech sector in particular makes it a unique target for cybercrime and cybersecurity threats when citizens, SMEs, and investors at large need more and more access to financial services in the age of pandemic COVID-19. With this first series of training, we aim to provide fundamental knowledge on cyber threats, actors and methodologies, as well as critical business assets and ways to mitigate risks. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation and training, please type them into Q&A box in your Zoom control panel or Facebook. I'll gather your remarks and questions together during the presentation, and we'll finally have time for the questions. Now, further without ado, we will turn the time over our speakers, and the floor is yours, Yusuf.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for your nice words. Let me share my screen. I hope you can all see my screen. Okay, thanks. Yeah, welcome to you all. Today our topic, my topic is cyber threats, actors, and methodologies. So we have selected this title because actually it's hidden in this relational drawing. Cyber actors are exploiting or basically using the threats by applying and following some methodologies. Let's dive into some numbers that can awaken us. Cybersecurity insiders suggest that average annual potential losses from cyber attacks is close to 9% of banks' net income globally, or around not 1 billion, not 10 billion, but 100 billion US dollars. That's a really huge number. I think all of you already understand the importance of the cybersecurity, therefore you are here, obviously. But just to give you some more facts, the Financial Conduct Authority recently reported that British financial service companies saw a 5-fold rise in data breaches in 2018 compared with the year prior. According to the IBM, the average cost of data breach globally is approximately 4.9 million euros per cybersecurity incident. That's again a huge number per cybersecurity incident. So why exactly finance sector? Financial institutions, banks, companies are constantly under attack. They are all reportedly victims of separate ransom and extortion attempts. Criminals target financial firms because that's where the money is. I mean, cybersecurity hasn't changed this fundamental instinct of the criminals. They always follow the money. Companies and cyber threats are constantly in competition. Companies have limited amount of resources for cybersecurity and sometimes also lack of management support for it, whereas cyber actors have literally infinite amount of time and resources. Let's have a look at some statistics. As we are mainly located in Europe, I want to emphasize in this chart, England, Netherlands, Germany, Italy, and Sweden. This chart shows the most attacked countries when financial institutions are considered. Okay, then let us get to know the enemy a bit more. Who are these cyber actors? There are, of course, different taxonomies among threat actors, cyber actors, but this is more or less the whole story. Criminals, hacktivists, competitors, warfare. Warfare is like the states, countries, terrorism, and insiders. Of course, not every actor will threaten your company at the same level, and this is the exact reason why we are focusing on this right now. You as a company don't need to be afraid of warfare or terrorism, maybe, but whereas criminals or insiders could be a more realistic threat for you. Here, you see there is a really complex world out there. On the left side, you see the real threat actors. These are the criminal groups, or let's call syndicates, who are targeting the financial systems. Lazarus, Silence, Trickbot, or Netwire. These are real threat actors. These are threat actually actor groups. And on the right side, you see what they are focusing. Of course, the inner cycle here, the inner cycle is core banking infrastructure, is the deadliest one for the banking system in terms of impact. And unfortunately, the targeting trend is towards to the inner cycle. So every one of these actors try to attack to the inner circle, which is more dangerous. So let's have a look at some actors in detail. Criminals. Obviously, for criminals, the motive is money. The capabilities are moderate. Many attacks are simple but effective, though some groups write and deploy their custom tools. And what is the response during the coronavirus pandemic? The pandemic has created opportunities for scammers, for criminals, both leveraging it as part of social engineering techniques. Organized criminal groups have doubled down on ransom and extortion tactics in particular. So the impact of criminals has risen during this period. Hackers and hacktivists. Their motive is usually curiosity, attention, revenge, social justice, cause, whatever you call. Their capability typically low, such as they are usually using off-the-shelf tools, basic scripts, and web resources. What is the reaction to pandemic? As organizations have enabled greater remote working, there has been more exposure of vulnerable external-facing services. Malicious actors have increased their scanning and exploitation activities during this period. And lastly, state and spies. This actor is probably not directly relevant to you, but let us remember 2007 cyber attack in Estonia. I won't name the cyber actor in this case, but when you research a bit, you will see. Their motive is a national service, defense or offense against state adversaries. Their capabilities ranges from low to very high. These are persistent adversaries with resources to try many vectors to compromise a target. And the reaction to the pandemic, actually, the home working restrictions make the job of malicious states and spies easier more than ever. So let's have a look another chart. These numbers are from the United States based on a report from IBM. When threat actors are compared, all of them cost approximately over $4 million each in this research. But when we look at the donut chart on the right side, you see financially motivated breaches are dominating the scene. over 50%. So what is the reason to get to know the cyber actors? I mean, terrorist activists, states, insiders. The answer is actually to position yourself against them. You have to know which actors are relevant for me. That's important. We should not act like a government or state. We should not act like a basic home user, obviously. What we should do is we should basically do a risk assessment. After my speech, Thomas will cover the risk assessment in detail in the second part of the event, and he will give you more insight about risk assessment. Now let's have a look at the cyber threats and cyber methodologies. What cyber actors are using, their tactics and ways of doing. There are many types of cyber threats, and I want to briefly classify them here. Of course, going into detail of each item would take normally a whole day, or maybe more. So I want to only focus on several of them, because I think those selected ones are more related to you and to finance sector in particular. You see malware, ransomware, man-in-the-middle attack, social engineering, drive-by download attacks. There are various attack types. Before going into the details of cyber threats, I want to briefly present you the cyber attack lifecycle so you can better understand their methods. It starts with the reconnaissance on the left side. That means finding the exploit, finding the way to get into the system. After that, the initial compromise, or let's say the malware installation, that's the second step. Then establishing the foothold, setting up the command and control center, staying there. Then escalate privileges step. And at the end, completing the mission. I mean, what the objective is, either data exfiltration, data injection, or complete destruction of data. In this picture, there is one thing we should know, which is successful attack requires multiple steps. And that is a very fundamental reality. That means if we can break this chain, if we can break this life cycle, then we can also prevent this cyber attack, or at least limit the blast radius. That is the term defense in depth. Defense in depth is a concept used in IT in which multiple layers of security controls are placed throughout the systems. Thomas will get into the detail of this concept in the second session as well. So now let's look at the first threat, which is a very notorious one, distributed denial of service, DDoS. Distributed denial of service attack is a malicious attempt to disrupt normal traffic to a web page or a service. On the picture, you will see a bot buster on the left side is managing or commanding the victim machines via some intermediary bots. Actually, this is some kind of a hiding mechanism for the attacker. It hides itself, and no one can easily know who is managing those victim computers. Let's explain DDoS with an analogy. It's like you are trying to reach somewhere with your car, but there is traffic jam and you cannot reach your destination in time. That's the DDoS. In real cyber world, that means you cannot reach out to the service or server you are looking for, and then you cannot shop on Amazon, or you cannot book a hotel on Booking.com. Another very famous threat is ransomware. Ransomware is a malicious software that infects your computer and displays messages demanding a fee to be paid in order for your system to work again. This class of malware is a criminal money-making scheme, and that can be installed through deceptive links, email messages, instant messages, or website, whatever. On the right side, you see a screenshot from WannaCry ransomware. It's a famous ransomware from 2017, which targeted computers running Windows operating system by encrypting data and demanding ransom payments in Bitcoin. So WannaCry ransomware has affected over 200,000 systems worldwide and affected 150 countries. And the attack had a substantial financial impact worldwide. It is estimated that cybercrime caused over $4 billion in losses across the globe. It's a huge number. Another example for ransomware. On the summer 2019, a London-based foreign currency exchange Travelex was hit by a ransomware this attack crypted its network and stole 5 gigabytes of documents. The attackers demanded Travelex to pay $6 million to restore its systems and prevent the stolen data from being leaked online. But of course, not all stories end happily. What happened? Reports estimate that the attack ultimately cost the firm almost $30 million, and with 2.3 million reported paid in ransom. Although they paid ransom, they couldn't get their data. Travelex in the end filed for bankruptcy and collapsed into administration. And recently we have seen combination of these threats like this one, DDoS plus ransomware. I mean, those are different threats, but they may be combined into each other. The Australian Cybersecurity Center says it is aware of a number of ransom threats made toward banking and financial organizations. The threats in question are delivered via email and threaten the recipient with a sustained DDoS attack unless a sum of the Monero cryptocurrency is paid. The Monero cryptocurrency is a different one, but it's like a Bitcoin. Another important threat from my point of view is disinformation. The financial services industry are likely to be targeted by large-scale disinformation efforts in the future. A well-orchestrated disinformation campaign may have serious consequences on brand reputation, specific markets, and even market stability. The tools required to implement a successful campaign are well within the capability for financially and politically motivated threat adversaries. An example, in a disinformation campaign from 2019, a WhatsApp rumor challenges Metro Bank in UK. What happened next? Customers want to withdraw their money. Hundreds of Metro Bank customers queued outside some West London branches over the weekend, prompted by WhatsApp messages advising people to withdraw money from accounts and from their safety deposit boxes. For me, this is just a tiny example how dangerous disinformation campaign can be. Another threat similar to disinformation, but deserves definitely a separate title, deepfake. While the act of faking content is not new, deepfake leverages powerful techniques like artificial intelligence, like machine learning, to manipulate or generate visual and audio content with a high potential to deceive. And to be honest, this technique is getting better and better, while machine learning and AI is also advancing. And I expect we will see more serious cases that deepfake will have effect on masses. And there is a very correct definition of deepfake from Security Magazine. It says, deepfake will tell us true lies. Okay, now we know the actors, the threats, and their methodologies. What now? What should be our objective? For me, we are all on an ever-changing chessboard with the adversaries. So we are playing chess with them. And there is no 100% security in this game, unfortunately. But there is a constant struggle and competition between companies and cyber actors. For me, you have to always remember the Pareto principle when you try to do something, try to achieve something. And lastly, maybe you will not like this, but I truly believe it. The key is to raise the bar for the cyber actors and let them find another victim that is weaker than you. So that concludes my part. I will now give the word to Thomas, and we will get your questions from Q&A at the end of the event together.
Thank you very much for this comprehensive presentation, Yusuf. And we will go ahead with Thomas now. And Thomas, the floor is yours. Please unmute your computer, and we are going to hear you. Great.
Well, better. Sorry for that, and I need to make sure that my presentation is visible to the users. Is it the way? No, they can only see me. Share screen, that would help. Up. There we are.
Yes.
Voilà. What I will talk is about business critical assets to be protected from cyber threats and evaluate the risks. Basically, what we will see is what are my values and what have I to protect. How can I define the business critical assets? What are the threats to the organization? Then what is risk? So it's a very simple definition, but it's still very interesting to go over basic definitions. So we focus on what we have to protect. Then we quickly go over the fact that basically the way the question or the title is formulated drives us towards the NIST cybersecurity framework and what it is. We will go over a quick overview of what are the NIST proposed control, or what are the NIST proposed, what is the checklist proposed by NIST, and remind that security is a matter for everybody. What are my values? The CFO will boil down everything to money, and basically he's right. If you don't have any money, you are usually out of business. It's very important so that you always make an estimation of the values of the values of your companies. It's not only also money, but also some companies like the French doctors or Amnesty International or your church or mosque or synagogue may also have some values. Typically also in the commodities, you have only one water provider, so they have to think about, okay, we need to deliver water, and that is our only business, and all our customers are basically locked down, but we still have to make sure that we protect the water that we are delivering. Army, we don't leave anybody behind. It looks irrelevant when we talk about that in the financial markets, but it's very important that you understand your customer. If you're working for a bank where the core of the business comes from, say, cities and or big organizations, you may not care, or you may spend less time caring about the private customers. If you are a private bank, you may maybe take more focus on what are your big customers and what do they do cherish. Also, one of the things that is coming to mind for the values of my organization is basically more and more companies says, we only collaborate with organizations who fit with this and this. Typically, we only use service organizations that offer equal opportunity. So one of my values I will have to protect is make sure that the organizations I'm working with are the one who comply to that. It looks odd, and as I mentioned, firstly, the CFO will boil it down to money. But if the company says, for instance, we only work with companies which offer and give proven tracks of equal opportunity, I will have to make sure that I'm able to choose those companies. How can I officially protect my organization's values? But first, I have to define which they are, and then I have to prioritize them. The biggest application used in a lot of companies was, until the pandemic, the internal website for the menu. It has a massive traffic right before lunch, and even then we don't protect it. So this is given as a joke, but still, if you don't prioritize what they are, and many banks do not have one brand or do not have only one brand. Typically, Fortis has 3 or 4 brands, and Belfius also was as typically big customers like cities and counties and states, and also private customers like you and me. So within a company, we need to prioritize what goes first and what goes next. From then, we can decide who can access. Of course, bank transfers, everybody can access. No, only our customers can access it. When can they be accessed? Or through which channel? And so we have to ask ourselves a lot of questions about all those the values or value chains of the organization to make sure that we protect them adequately. What level of protection I want against alteration? We all want 100%, that's for sure. We all want no leakage, but we still have to make sure that this goes to a certain level. Okay, so for for fintechs, all which is related to the banking world will be a top priority, that's for sure, but there will be probably supporting services which will be of least importance. Typically nowadays, even though it's not formally that way, the branches in the banks are usually seen as not the first thing to protect, because we are reducing the number of branches, and usually in branches we provide to the customer more and more advice services like those, rather than just doing the financial transactions. Okay, and it's very important to realize that those things and acknowledge them. And if people don't want to acknowledge them, no problem, but then they will you have the wrong priorities. We probably also have to localize them. We are getting in a world economy. So if you look at the major banks, they have offices, they have in not all countries, but a lot of countries. And so basically we also have to know exactly what is available from where and how we can define it. We probably do not want our customers' accounts to be all available from Ukraine only, and it's not negative, it's just that statistically in Europe, we have a lot of attacks from Eastern countries or Far East countries, because it's easier for them to not be prosecuted. Typically also, where are the location or the data centers? And basically we can then decide whether to deduplicate where necessary, or remove duplicated copies, or make them available in several places. So the question is more removing undue copies of, and what I mostly talk about data because it helps people visualize that, but basically that goes nowadays with services. Do we have services of previous versions that are still running in some places? If you think about branches, or if you look at a company like ING, they have a service all around the world. When you do an update of a service, it's very important that depending on where they are and local regulations, we make sure that all those services are safe and that we update them accordingly. So one of the main things is that you must have a detailed, up-to-date, comprehensive inventory of your entire environment. And that is something often people underestimate, is that if you lack that, so you know the process which are bringing value, you know the process which are bringing money, but if you don't know what is supporting those services, those functionalities, if you don't know what are the critical assets of your company, and you don't have the complete inventory, you will just not do a good job. You will do a 95%, and usually whatever is below 98, 99, 99 and you start putting the nines, you're just basically going to be a failure. Yeah? So for each process, we need to have the business that defines what are the key requirements set. And then we will see the supporting assets. And based on that, and as I mentioned, the inventory must be comprehensive. It means that all assets must be identified. Is that computer of the everybody in the company? And when I say everybody, it's not 98 or 99%. It's more like 99.99% of the hardware that must be known, even for the small device. What about the phones? And also have a very, very clear view of the supporting assets. I have made a special mobile app on my to help my customer using accessing the bank, but one of the libraries used by my developers is corrupted, and basically there is a major issue. We are available on iPhone, and there is two vulnerable things that were moving around not long ago. Hopefully they were responsibly disclosed, but there were two different very critical vulnerabilities that were available, that were there, and hopefully nobody knew about it. But if you don't know about it, and Apple hasn't had the time to fix it, you need to find what we do. Do we stop business for a little while, or do we continue? So the supporting assets is really crux to your correct management. What makes an asset to be critical? Well, that's where a significant value of the company is held or is supported by that asset. Okay, so it's an asset that brings money, okay, or it's an asset that brings profit. Amnesty International does not talk about money, but still, if they are recognized as one of the best organizations in the world for protecting human rights, it's important that they respect some values, and that profit is not valuable in terms of dollars or euros, but it's basically we do a better job than other company or other organization doing the similar job. Okay, so this is very important that this is clearly defined in the fintech world, and in most companies we will first talk about money, but really understand what are the values of your company. If the company says it's 95% green energy, if the company says we need to have customers which have no proven which have not been held accountable for bankruptcy or civil or criminal offense, well, that is one thing you will need to do. Yusuf talked about all the threats, but basically, so I will not go into too much detail, but it's always the same. You've got the internal, external ones, and then you need to change. You need to think with security architect or security specialist over what are those, because if you don't know against what you have to protect, then basically you're not going to find the right solution. Okay, so what is the risk? It's by definition of the NIST standards, probability times an impact. Example, the asset is a commerce database on the mainframe, and what I will do, the total risk will be the sum of all the individual risks. Okay, hardware failure. Okay, can we do something about it? Yes, we can. By REDS, we can. CPU failure. Yes, we can make the things redundant. It costs more, but if it brings value, what's the problem? Cost of doing business. Okay. So you need also to organize a little bit for yourself. I just give them as an example. I won't go over every one of those in details, but it's very important that you classify all the risks, and so from that you can decide what you do. There are companies nowadays that still do not manage the GDPR correctly, and they say yes, okay, but if you are caught, it will be a minor offense, and we expect the fine to be limited, and based on that, we will not, it would be cheaper to pay the fine and then start doing something than do nothing and then do everything right now, and it will cost a fortune. So not mentioned yet, but security is basically the ensuring that the systems stay, that you ensure that the interior of the system is maintained, that the capacity of the information on the system is maintained, and that the system stays available at all costs. So Yusuf talked about the denial of service, but that is typically nowadays one of the easy way for cheap actors or actors which cannot afford a lot of money to attack you. What they will do distribute denial of service, and there is very, very little things you can do about it. Just buy yourself a subscription to one of the provider for against those type of attacks, but it will cost you a lot of money. So typically your problem will boil down to, and I just provide a simplified bank. You have the different services, they all come down to the mainframe, and there you have the customers, the accounts, and also, and I need to shift a little bit my different things. What will be your concern is typically for one of those. So you are not usually dealing with all of those at once. That is the role of the risk, the risk management of the company. In general, for you, in the case of a manager or director, usually deals with one of those, and he has to ensure that for his channel, for his product, everything is okay. One of the things I need to make sure, or in any way, is that the reporting towards the banking authorities and the accounting and taxes is as correct as possible, because when they will find there is a problem, they usually make sure that you don't do it a second time, and they remove your license, or they will just, give you a massive fine, so you are not tempted to do it again. Okay. So there are frameworks to help you doing the job, and there are tens of those. But when we talk about protecting and detecting threats, we usually look at more and more the NIST framework. It's the cybersecurity framework proposed by the NIST, with basically very smart, broad questions that you should ask yourself, and then you provide the answer. So I mentioned that we should have identified all our assets, or all our supporting assets. So first identify all the process that bring money, that bring value, and then identify all the supporting assets. And this is something which is, supposed to be completely done. The next step will be to see how we can protect them. And what proposed in NIST is a checklist of questions you can ask yourself. I'm not going to go in too much detail of all those. I'll just copy paste from the framework, because the questions are usually, it looks theoretical, and then once you start working with those lists, you really find that the people ask the right question for you to work on the matter. So I will quickly, they propose for the protection of the assets 6 big sort of guidelines. So ensuring that the proper identity management, authentication, access control, it's very broad, but then if you look, they go into much more detail. Again, the point is not to go over all of those. I copy paste from the framework because it's very interesting, and it helps organize it really helps organizing yourself into how to put in place the defense and how to protect. But if you have a process running, maybe you will prefer to use another checklist. So the next thing is that they propose awareness and trainings, because your best defense will be people education. It's very, very hard. And when I say very, very hard, it's really so tempting when you have a USB key hanging around to put it into your computer and say, oh, I will help the poor guy, the poor lady who lost it. And how can I define who it is? Even though you just come out of a training telling you, don't do that. People will still do it because they just cannot resist the fact of helping each other. It is something very pathetic in the way people, in the attacking people, because they rely on people's generosity to help. And well, once you do the wrong thing, you're done. So it was not mentioned as such, but there are all the questions about data security. Excuse me. If you don't know which data needs to be protected a lot, which data needs to be protected a little, and how you're going to do it, then you just, you're doomed for failure. You need to prioritize your work, and you need to first know exactly where are your data and your records, and to make sure that you manage them consistently. Information protection process. You do have procedures and process to do the things right. We will go quickly over the defense in depth, and one of the first things people fail is that the biggest value for one company is usually its employee. And if you recruit people who are incompetent, if you recruit people who do not have the knowledge, if you recruit people that have no knowledge about things, but you haven't taken the time to ensure that they knew or did not know, then you are also not putting your assets right. You say, yeah, but I trust my guts to recruit people. Fine. People have no education. People have they're probably the best ones, they're the best people. But when you recruit people, you need to make sure that they know, or they have a proven track record. I see there is some chat. Okay, I'll answer that afterwards. Maintenance, also it's very important when I want to protect my assets, is that you take into consideration how my assets will be maintained. I have Windows, but basically I did not pay for the subscription, so I don't get the latest update, or I have an antivirus, but I don't pay for the latest update. That is the obvious one. If you are a company like a big bank, you probably do not want somebody with proven track records of criminal activity to come and clean up or vacuum clean your data center. You want those people to be, so it's very important that you manage that. I always give very simple, access management, physical protection, because it's so easy to understand. Of course, once you go much more in detail for softwares, how are you going to do the maintenance? You've got an SAP, how are you going to do the maintenance to ensure that the system is available 100% of the time, okay? And then you will need to have protective technology. Well, that's all the firewalls, web application firewalls. You need to consider that in very deep detail. Now, I just want to go quickly over all those 6 points. There is the detailed questions that you can go over. It's really not the point to go into one of those. It's really important that you consider the whole matter as, the whole problem as it's in, comprehensively. So you make sure that you don't leave one weak spot through which that people will go. The water does not flow over a bridge. The water does not flow over a wall. The water just takes the easy path. Now, why would threat actors take the complex path to get to you? Okay, so we go over those and really don't know. You've done your job right, but you still need to be able to detect that you've been exploited. You have 50,000 computers. How do you detect that there is a problem, that there is a zero-day malware on one of those computers? Okay, so you need to be able to analyze anomalies and events in a way which is, as I mentioned several times, comprehensive. So you need to see it, through the entire organization, and you need to be able to say, oh, this is something which is not okay. There is something fishy there. And the big problem is not to see that. The big problem is that 80%, 90% of the time, it's a false positive. You are looking at something and it's just plain normal activity of your system. It just occurs very, not very often. So you see it as something unusual. What is also recommended is to put in place, and again, for FinTech, it's really, and for all big companies, it's really, really, really something that takes a lot of energy, is to make sure that you have continuous monitoring of your security. Which are the assets I need to constantly monitor to see whether there are some unusual activities, and can I also look back in time to make sure that this activity that I see today is not something that we had in the past. So this continuous monitoring is pretty expensive, pretty complex, and voilà. And then you need to have some detection process. So that is typically, let's talk about web banking application. Typically, if you have the referrer from the HTTP request, and we can go in much more technical details if you want, but I think it's very important to keep first with a high-level description. But if you have people doing HTTP requests and it comes from a referrer, which is the Yahoo mailbox, and it goes straight into the mobile, the transaction part, well, it's not something you usually should see. It means that somebody from his Yahoo mailbox is able to jump straight into the bank transfer app, and that is not something you expect. You expect people first to be identified. So what is going on? Okay, that is a very simple example, but you should be able to, you should see how you can, that you can detect, unusual processes. So again, these are the list proposed by the NIST framework. I provide them quickly so people, when they go back with the slides, they have the list. You can also download the NIST framework. They're really simple questions, but once you have done your homework thoroughly, it really helps you, seeing where the problem could be in detecting that there are some issues in your system. Okay, so basically we come almost to an end, is that we have identified all our assets and all our supporting assets of the business critical. And now we have several questions that we need to honestly ask ourselves, and the framework will not give you, a sum up or whatever. The framework will just tell you how you want to protect them a bit more or completely, and then you have to provide the answer to those questions, and you can give yourself a thumb up or a bad day, sort of. Okay. It's a one framework. It's related to the question that we decide to answer today, or to try to help you answer today for your company. And one of the last slide is basically, and I apologize to not have copy, but it's open source image from university. The whole point will be that you will have to do the entire exercise for the whole organization, or for your whole process, but you will have to look at all the details. The question is that if one of those is failing, if you don't, securely destroy your backups, then somebody may take a copy of those backups and be able to use the data on it. And you say, my system is 100% safe. I just forgot one process, which is the suppression or the physical destruction of the hard disk, and it's all gone. So usually you have the external physical security, perimeter security. Nowadays it all goes through the network, so you have all the network related security, and these are buzzwords. Fine, it helps you, understanding exactly what it means, and or it helps you visualize what it could mean for your organization. Then you have the segregation of all the endpoints, and all the issue related application security. It's a 15 days or a 50 days training with no problem, just on that. And basically your data security. And what is also very important is those two green triangles, or close pie shares, is that a lot of things you should do is basically anticipating and preparing. So it's prevention, and that can be done by getting the right policy. If you don't mention how long you keep the data, if you don't mention how you protect your data, you're just going to be a failure. And also what people also often underestimate is the work needed in operation. Doing a proper management of your operation, backups, updates, who can access during operation, how can the help desk work. If you don't manage that properly, you also will be in trouble. Normally this concludes my talk. I will stop for now, and I will give you back the word. How can I stop sharing? Not leave.
Well, thank you, Thomas. Look like we have a few questions, and an anonymous attendee asks, what will be the pros for making risk management externally, or it is okay just to make cybersecurity risk management internally with our IT experts? And I think, Thomas, you would answer this question.
The question is very simple and very hard to answer. The question is, how mature is your company? I would recommend to always, if you're not people who are either certified with a long experience in the matter, to get some external advice at some point. Even if you're a big company, I think for the evaluation of your risks, so typically validating that your external perimeter, that your external network, that your applications are safe and are, so to validate that your protection are efficient, I would definitely recommend to have external companies doing that, because they're people who just do that day and night. To do it internally for scheme management, the governance and all those things. Yes, if people are trained, if people are used to do it, yes, you can do that. Just make sure that, and it's part also of your work to make sure that people get the training and the awareness, and then it should be okay. If your company has no IT experts, well, hope this gives an answer.
Thank you. And Furkan asks, do the cyber attack actors target only banks in terms of FinTech, or companies, financial departments are also targeted? And I think this question goes to Yusuf.
Thanks for the question, Furkan. Short answer, definitely yes. Long answer, yes and no. Attackers will attack any company that has some value, and they will exploit whatever they can find, either financial department or HR. I mean, if there is an exploit they can use in any department, in the end they will attack.
Thank you. And Stevens asks, our web shops are built with Shopify platform, which already has built-in protection. Any other measures that we can take to protect our operations? And Thomas, can you answer this question? Thank you.
Yes, there is also a question of Onur Sultan, if I read correctly, that you skipped. For the question of Steven, this is a broader question about procurement management. Basically, Spotify is one of your supplier, and it's up to you to make sure that you keep an eye on what they do. Spotify can have problem at some point, and you may say for a day or two, they will not be off for too long, that you better stop doing this integration with Spotify for a little while, because you would have issues. So voilà. No, beside that, no, I think Spotify or IBM or Facebook or whatever are usually doing a an excellent job. But remember that they're doing an excellent job for themselves. So again, if somebody has to make profits, it's probably they look for their own profit, not for your profit, even though it's what's going to be helpful for them to you know, voilà, to stay in business. They do not need you short term. So at some point, some companies will say, we lost 2% of our customers, too bad for them, but otherwise we'd have lost so many millions, and it was cheaper for us to drop those 2%. They will not say it that way, but still that's what's going on.
And thank you for the questions. I think we are on time, and it's almost noon here. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here, and I think we'll see you next time. Please don't forget to follow our social media accounts. And if our speakers want to add something and finalize, this is yours, and we can finalize the.
There is a question. There is still the question from Anu that we did not answer.
Okay, go ahead and answer it, please, Thomas.
So what would be the logical way to proceed for organizations that do not detect anomalies or subject to attack? Good question. The way I understand the question is that you don't proceed for doing so. I usually take as an example a shepherd. When you see a shepherd working, he will look at his sheep and he will tell you, oh, look, that one, she's, limping, and look at that one, she's pregnant, and look at that one, she's getting old, she always behind. And the shepherd usually does a good job. Otherwise, he's out of business if all these sheep are dying. That is the same thing you should do. You should look at your IT. You should look at your most valuable assets, and you should make sure that you do so. If you don't do anything to detect, well, then I can buy you a box of tissues, and you can start, and it's going to be ready for the day you're going to cry. How can they strengthen your security? If they don't know, one of the simplest way is to basically go to the business and say, what if? What if this happens? Of course, the what if, what you put afterwards will make your question either smart or dull. But it's really important that you ask them, what if we don't deliver? One day I talked to the CEO of a company, and I said, what if the system is not available for 3 days? And he was driving his car on the motorway, and it was like 3 seconds delay, and then he said, oh, I don't care. Oh, the help desk will be overwhelmed with phones, but I can survive that. I cannot survive 3 days without these and these and these. And that was for him what was the most important. And then I see the two other guys in the call looking at me like, with big eyes. But so you really need to know what are your values or your CEO's values. And then you just go with what if this is unavailable? What if this happened? And then people realize if they don't care, you can bring your horse to the water, you can't make it drink. Same here. I think that's, if Anu wants to react, there is one open question.
Yeah.
We have no questions. I think we have new one. And Stevens asks, would it be possible to receive a copy PowerPoint of the presentation? Yes, we will definitely send you. Thank you for your interests. And I think we are online for an hour at the moment. I hope you like our webinar and find it useful. This is the first in a series of our cyber events. Please follow our Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn accounts. And let me thank our speakers very much for their time and insights. You can always contact with Horizon Global Academy for further webinars, training, and consultancy services. And I wish you all a good day. You will receive the recordings and PowerPoint in a couple of days, and please check your inboxes. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.